The Philistines are mentioned in the Bible as foreign invaders, but few know that their story began long before their arrival in the land of Canaan. Archaeologists suggest they were part of the feared Sea Peoples, a conglomerate of nomadic tribes that, coming from the Aegean, possibly even Crete, devastated kingdoms on their way to the Middle East. This theory is reinforced by recent DNA discoveries that reveal European genetic traces in remains found in ancient Philistine cities. But the most fascinating aspect is how they adapted. Upon arriving at the coastal plain of Canaan, they absorbed elements of local cultures and created a unique identity. They were not just warriors. They were strategists, merchants, and masters in iron smelting, a technology that gave them a crucial advantage over their enemies. The history of the Philistines is a fascinating web of migration, adaptation, and power. Their arrival in Canaan marked a cultural and political revolution that shaped the region. They emerged during a period of collapsing ancient civilizations. Mycenaean palaces were burning, Egypt faced constant invasions, and the kingdoms of the Middle East were in disarray. Amid this chaos, the Philistines seized the moment to establish themselves as a dominant force. Despite their origins in the Aegean, the Philistines were not merely invaders imposing their culture, they were also masters of adaptation. Upon arriving in Canaan, they founded strategic cities that quickly became centers of economic and military power. Gaza, Ashkelon, Ekron, Gath, and Ashdod were not just cities. They represented Philistine resilience and innovation. Each of these cities was constructed to maximize defense and trade, leveraging land and sea routes that connected the Mediterranean to the Middle East. The Philistines stood out for their ability to integrate local traditions into their culture, creating a unique identity. Their pottery is a striking example of this fusion, initially combining Mycenaean patterns from their origins with Canaanite influences acquired over time. Today, these artifacts are crucial for identifying their settlements and understanding their cultural adaptation. Beyond pottery, their cuisine also offers fascinating insights. Food remnants from excavations indicate that the Philistines introduced new dietary habits, including the consumption of pork, which was rare among the local Semitic populations. These dietary traits stood out as cultural markers and suggest a people unafraid to be different in a foreign land. Their temples and religious practices are another revealing aspect. Although the Bible associates them with deities such as Dagon, their religion was a complex blend of imported and local beliefs. Statues found in their sanctuaries show a syncretism between Aegean and Middle Eastern influences, demonstrating that even in their spirituality, the Philistines were in constant dialogue with surrounding cultures. The Philistines were innovators. Their technology, far more advanced than that of their neighbors, transformed the military and economic landscape of the region. While many still relied on bronze weapons, the Philistines produced iron tools and armaments, giving them a clear advantage. This, combined with their strategic location, allowed them to dominate trade routes and maintain significant power for centuries. On the other hand, the relationship between the Philistines and the Egyptians reveals an interesting dynamic. Initially seen as invaders, the Philistines eventually became strategic allies of Egypt at certain points, acting as a buffer between the Egyptian Empire and northern peoples. This relationship of conflict and cooperation illustrates the Philistines' political skill in navigating between the great powers of their time. However, their strength lay not only in their weapons or technology, but also in their ability to balance tradition and innovation. They managed to preserve aspects of their origins while creating a new identity shaped by the land they settled in. This made the Philistines more than just invaders or enemies. They became a transformative force that left deep marks on the region's history. The Philistines represented a society rich in cultural diversity and structural organization, shaped by both their Aegean origins and their coexistence with neighboring peoples in Canaan. Their daily lives, beliefs, and practical skills illustrate a people who not only survived in a hostile territory, but thrived through innovation, cooperation, and adaptation. By settling in the coastal plain of Canaan, the Philistines created city-states that were not just administrative and military hubs, but also vibrant centers of cultural and economic activity. Gaza, for example, stood out as a strategic trading point between Egypt and the rest of the Middle East, while Ekron was an agricultural hub that produced olive oil on an industrial scale. These city-states formed an interconnected network through the Pentapolis, an advanced political system in which each city maintained its autonomy but collaborated on common decisions, such as defense against external enemies. Metalworking was one of the most defining aspects of the Philistines. Their skill gave them a military advantage, but also consolidated their position as an economically influential people. They controlled the era's technology, enabling them to create more efficient agricultural tools and superior weapons. This positioned them as leaders in a world where many still relied on bronze. The Philistines also stood out for the sophistication of their material culture. Their pottery is a testament to their creativity and craftsmanship. Initially, their vessels featured geometric patterns inspired by the Mycenaean style, but over time they began to incorporate local forms and motifs, resulting in a unique aesthetic. Philistine pottery was not only functional, but also a form of cultural expression, with designs that told stories and reflected their hybrid identity. Religion played a central role in the lives of the Philistines, and their spiritual practices reflected their cultural blending. While they worshipped gods like Dagon, frequently mentioned in the Bible, they also integrated elements of Canaanite and Egyptian traditions. Their temples, such as the one found at Tel Ekron, reveal architecture combining diverse styles and influences, from geometric altars to dedicatory inscriptions in local languages. Moreover, evidence suggests they used portable images of their gods during battles, seeking divine protection in critical moments. Another interesting aspect of the Philistines was their well-structured society. Within their city-states, there was a clear division between civil and military leaders, merchants, artisans, and farmers. This organization allowed each segment of society to contribute to collective strength, from large-scale agricultural production to the construction of highly elaborate urban defenses. Although often depicted as enemies in biblical narratives, the Philistines also interacted peacefully with other peoples. This is evident in their assimilation of Semitic names and customs over the centuries, as well as in the trade and cultural exchanges that occurred even during times of conflict. Records indicate that the Philistines not only adopted local dietary practices, but also incorporated Semitic words and expressions into their language, revealing a coexistence more complex than mere hostility. Socially, the Philistines were also known for celebrating life through music, dance, and festivities. Artistic representation suggests that musical instruments such as lyres and drums were part of their celebrations, and their passion for festivities may have influenced their neighbors. Additionally, the Philistines were skilled navigators and traders. Their coastal location enabled them to establish trade relations with distant regions, bringing in exotic items such as fine oils, textiles, and even precious metals. This ability to connect with the wider world made them not only formidable warriors, but also economic visionaries who understood the value of commercial alliances. The Philistines' ability to blend technological innovation, political organization, and cultural adaptation makes them one of antiquity's most intriguing peoples. Although often reduced to the role of biblical enemies, their history reveals a complexity that goes far beyond battles, showcasing a dynamic, resilient, and deeply influential people. The relationships between the Philistines and the Israelites form one of the most dynamic and multifaceted chapters of biblical history. More than enemies, the two peoples were deeply intertwined in a relationship of conflicts, cultural exchanges, and spiritual tensions that spanned centuries. Initially, the Philistines were seen as foreigners in a contested land. In the biblical accounts of Genesis, Abraham and Isaac have encounters with the Philistines revolving around control of essential resources like water wells. These stories do not describe great battles, but point to a competitive coexistence where diplomacy was still an option. These episodes reflect an early period of interaction where both peoples were beginning to define their territories and identities. Over time, this coexistence gave way to open rivalry, especially during the period of the Judges. The Philistines are portrayed as military oppressors, exerting control over the Israelites and imposing political and economic domination. A notable example is the story of Samson, a hero whose exploits against the Philistines became emblematic of Israelite resistance. His life, full of superhuman strength, passions, and tragedies, culminated in a final act of destruction when he brought down Dagon's temple, killing thousands of Philistines but sacrificing himself in the process. This was not just revenge, but a confrontation between Israelite and Philistine values. Another significant event occurred when the Philistines captured the Ark of the Covenant, one of Israel's most sacred symbols. This conquest was a spiritual and political blow to the Israelites, but brought unexpected consequences for the Philistines. According to the biblical account, the Ark's presence in their cities caused calamities, including diseases and unexplained disasters. Frightened, the Philistines decided to return the Ark to the Israelites, sending it back on a cart pulled by oxen. This episode highlighted the clash of spiritual beliefs, with Israel's God demonstrating power over Philistine deities like Dagon. However, the rivalry between the two peoples reached its peak in the Battle of Elah, where David faced Goliath. This confrontation was not just a military battle, but a moment of symbolic and spiritual significance. Goliath represented everything the Philistines symbolized: brute strength, advanced weaponry, and intimidating power. On the other hand, David embodied faith, cunning, and courage. Armed only with a sling and 5 stones, he defeated the giant, marking a turning point in the relationship between the two peoples. This event catapulted David to fame and laid the foundation for his eventual rise to the throne. With David as king, the power dynamic changed drastically. He led successful military campaigns against the Philistines, weakening their dominance and expanding Israelite territory. Under his reign, the Philistines were militarily subdued and incorporated into the growing kingdom of Israel. However, the relationship was not solely one of conquest. David and other Israelite leaders may have learned from the Philistines, particularly in the use of advanced technologies, which became fundamental for Israel's military and economic development. Beyond the conflicts, there is evidence of significant cultural exchange between the two peoples. Over time, the Philistines adopted Semitic names and practices, demonstrating a deeper interaction than mere hostility. Similarly, the Israelites likely benefited from Philistine innovations in areas such as agriculture, trade, and metallurgy. This relationship, as tense as it was inevitably marked by exchanges and mutual influences. Culturally, the Philistines stood out for practices that often contrasted with Israelite values. The consumption of pork, for example, was common among the Philistines but avoided by the Israelites. This created a clear cultural distinction, but also served as a form of collective identity for both peoples. However, this difference did not prevent a blending of elements over generations in areas such as architecture and language. In a broader context, the Philistines represented both a physical and ideological threat. While Israel sought to establish its identity as a distinct people devoted to a single God, the Philistines symbolized the world of city-states, multiple deities, and military power. This contrast helped shape the biblical narrative and Israelite identity, defining the Philistines as an essential other for Israel's self-assertion. Even after their submission, the Philistines continued to play an important role in the region's history, serving as a reminder of the struggles that shaped Israel's rise. Their cultural contributions, resilience, and interactions with the Israelites make them one of the most intriguing and influential peoples of the biblical world. The Philistines' slow decline was marked by waves of resistance and adaptation, but also by profound transformations that eroded their identity layer by layer, like a rock worn down by wind and water over centuries. At the height of their influence, the Philistines dominated parts of Canaan's coast, shaping the region's economy, politics, and culture. However, as larger powers emerged, their independence and cultural distinction were gradually eroded. The arrival of the Assyrian Empire was more than an invasion. It was a cultural and structural shock that shifted the balance of power in the region. When Assyrian armies led by figures like Tiglath-Pileser III and Sargon II advanced, the Philistines, once masters of their land, faced an adversary surpassing them in military and organizational capacity. Their cities, previously connected by a loose confederation, were forced to deal individually with the invaders, breaking any political unity that might have given them a better chance of resistance. The impact was not only military but also economic. The tribute imposed by the Assyrians drained resources from Philistine cities, which relied on trade and agriculture for prosperity. The trade routes they once controlled were overtaken by the Assyrians, while agricultural production was redirected to meet the empire's demands. For the Philistines, this represented not just material loss, but a blow to their foundation as a self-sufficient people. Assyrian occupation also brought significant cultural changes. Under foreign rule, local practices were gradually replaced or modified. The introduction of new artistic styles, administrative practices, and even foreign deities undermined the Philistines' distinctive cultural traits. However, even in this context, they retained aspects of their identity that continued to impress their conquerors. When the Babylonian Empire took control of the region, the Philistines' decline entered a new, more definitive, and irreversible phase. The campaigns of Nebuchadnezzar II were brutal, and his deportation practices marked a breaking point. The removal of entire populations from Philistine cities dismantled the social fabric that upheld their culture. The resettled populations no longer had the temples, practices, and community connections that united the Philistines as a people. Although some cultural aspects may have been preserved in small communities, the unifying force of their homeland was lost. Philistine cities like Gaza, Ekron, and Ashkelon, once vibrant centers of cultural and economic activity, were progressively transformed into simple administrative outposts, or, in many cases, destroyed. The ruins of these cities today tell the story of a once prosperous people whose autonomy was erased by imperial powers. Under Persian rule, the last clear traces of a Philistine identity began to disappear. Although the Persians were more tolerant of local cultures than their predecessors, the Philistines had already lost the cohesion that defined them as a people. Their religious practices had been absorbed into neighboring traditions, their leaders had vanished, and their language likely was no longer spoken. What remained were fragments of heritage, traces that would be discovered centuries later by archaeologists and historians. The arrival of Alexander the Great and subsequent Hellenistic rule completed the assimilation of the Philistines into the tide of cultural and political changes sweeping the Mediterranean. Their cities were renamed, their practices replaced by Greek traditions, and their legacy became a footnote in the history of a rapidly transforming world. Nevertheless, the memory of the Philistines never completely disappeared. Although absorbed into other cultures, echoes of their existence remain in archaeology, toponymy, and literature. Their innovations influenced later civilizations. Even the name Philistines survived, transformed into Palestine, a testament to the fact that, even after their extinction as a people, their impact on the region's history could not be entirely erased. The Philistines' decline is a powerful lesson about the fragility of cultural identities in the face of greater forces. They were a resilient, adaptable, and innovative people, but like so many other ancient civilizations, they succumbed to the relentless waves of history. Despite this, what they left behind in their cities, innovations, and the memories preserved by others is a legacy that continues to intrigue and inspire. Philistine religion was more than simple worship of gods. It was a profound expression of their origins and the complex interaction with neighboring cultures. Their temples, altars, and rituals offered a rich view of their worldview, while their material culture revealed how they used art and technology to shape their environment and affirm their identity. Dagon, one of their principal deities, was often represented as a god of harvest and prosperity. This connection to agriculture reinforced the centrality of land and fertility in their religion, linking them both to the Aegean traditions they came from and the Canaanite practices they encountered in their new land. The image of Dagon also appears in Assyrian and Babylonian texts, suggesting that he was widely recognized in the region, not just among the Philistines. The cults associated with Ashtaroth and Baal-zebub complemented the Philistine pantheon. Ashtaroth, often depicted as a goddess of fertility and war, represented the creative and destructive forces of nature. She was worshipped through rituals involving music, dance, and offerings, elements that reveal a vibrant spirituality deeply connected to daily life. Baal-zebub, on the other hand, was associated with protection and control over natural forces, especially in times of crisis. The Philistines' relationship with these deities reflects their ability to integrate elements from different cultures into a cohesive spiritual system. Philistine temples were centers of religious and communal activity. At Ekron, one of the best preserved sites, the ruins of a large temple display a design that combined Aegean architectural elements, such as decorated columns, with Canaanite influences, like sacrificial altars. This syncretism is one of the most striking features of Philistine religion. Portable altars and small idols found in excavations suggest that their religion also had a mobile dimension, perhaps reflecting their maritime origins and their habit of carrying sacred images into battles. Religion played a central role in Philistine life, marked by rituals commemorating key moments such as harvests, military victories, and funerals. These rituals often involved food offerings, including agricultural products and meat. Archaeological discoveries have revealed deposits containing grain remains and animal bones, indicating that these items held symbolic value beyond their practical use. The material culture of the Philistines is equally fascinating. Their pottery is one of the most important archaeological clues to their presence and evolution. Early on, when they arrived in Canaan, their ceramics were clearly influenced by Aegean traditions, featuring elegant forms and geometric patterns. Over time, as they integrated into the Canaanite context, they began adopting more local styles, creating a unique fusion that stands out as a cultural signature. This pottery, beyond being functional, reflected an aesthetic sense and a connection to their collective identity. Agricultural tools, weapons, and even ornaments found at archaeological sites demonstrate that the Philistines' mastery of iron permeated all aspects of their lives. This not only gave them a technological edge, but also positioned them as central players in the region's trade networks. Philistine cuisine provides another window into their cultural life. Excavations in ancient Philistine cities have revealed significant amounts of pig remains, indicating that pork consumption was an important part of their diet. This practice sharply contrasted with the dietary prohibitions of the Israelites, creating a clear cultural marker distinguishing the two peoples. Additionally, evidence of large-scale olive oil production, particularly in Ekron, suggests that the Philistines not only supplied their own cities, but also participated in the regional agricultural trade. Philistine architecture also reflects their cultural complexity and pragmatism. Their cities were fortified with robust walls, often reinforced with towers offering strategic views of the surrounding territory. Inside the cities, large communal structures such as warehouses and plazas indicate a people who valued both protection and social organization. The discovery of drainage systems and water reservoirs also demonstrates the Philistines' engineering skill, enabling them to sustain dense urban populations. The cultural legacy of the Philistines is also evident in their artistic expressions and social practices. Music and dance were central elements of their celebrations, both religious and secular. Artistic depictions of lyres and drums on pottery and reliefs show that the Philistines were skilled musicians, and their festivities likely included performances that united the community and celebrated their identity. Even after their assimilation and the disappearance of their distinct identity, the material and spiritual remnants of the Philistines continue to inspire and surprise. Their ability to blend tradition with innovation and to absorb external influences without losing their essence highlights their resilience and creativity. Although the Philistines disappeared as a distinct people in the 5th century BCE, their impact on the region's history and culture endures in subtle and fascinating ways. As witnesses to a period of great transformation in the Middle East, they played central roles in the region's political, economic, and cultural development. More than just enemies of Israel, the Philistines were agents of innovation and adaptation, leaving a legacy that still intrigues archaeologists, historians, and biblical readers. One of the most visible legacies of the Philistines lies in the very name of the region they inhabited, Palestine. The Romans, renaming the area as Syria Palestina after the Jewish revolt in the 2nd century CE, adopted the term Philistia, derived from Philistines, to designate the area. This administrative decision transformed the name of a people into a geographical designation still in use today. Thus, even though the Philistines disappeared as an ethnic group, their name survived, tied to the land they once occupied. They not only pioneered the use of iron technology in Canaan, but also influenced other peoples through trade and the dissemination of knowledge. The impact of their innovations was felt long after their assimilation, as iron became the foundation of the economies and military forces of subsequent civilizations. Culturally, the Philistines left a profound mark on the region's artistic and architectural practices. Their pottery, with its unique patterns and hybrid styles, not only serves as a visual signature of their presence, but also influenced the design of utilitarian and decorative objects for centuries. The architecture of their cities, featuring centralized storage systems, robust walls, and advanced urban planning, inspired future generations to build with greater efficiency and functionality. Beyond material contributions, the Philistines' spiritual and narrative legacy is undeniable. In the Bible, they are often portrayed as antagonists of Israel, but this representation also ensured that their memory was preserved. Stories such as David and Goliath, the capture of the Ark of the Covenant, and the exploits of Samson perpetuated the Philistines as symbols of power and challenge. While viewed negatively in these narratives, they also highlight the Philistines' strength, organization, and impact as a formidable people. Modern archaeology has shed new light on the Philistines, demystifying some aspects of these stories and revealing the complexity of their culture. Discoveries at sites like Ashkelon, Gaza, and Ekron show that they were more than just warriors. They were traders, artisans, and community leaders who played essential roles in the fabric of regional life. These findings not only validate biblical references, but also enrich our understanding of who the Philistines truly were. Another significant legacy of the Philistines lies in their example of cultural adaptation. Despite originating as a migrant group from the Aegean, they managed to integrate into the cultural landscape of Canaan, absorbing local influences while maintaining key elements of their identity. This cultural syncretism serves as a lesson in how societies can reinvent themselves and thrive in new contexts, even when facing formidable challenges. The Philistines' legacy is also evident in contemporary discussions about identity, memory, and history. The way they were depicted in the Bible and later traditions often reduce them to negative stereotypes. However, advances in archaeology and historiography challenge these simplistic portrayals, revealing a complex people who skillfully navigated the turbulences of their era. The Philistines may no longer exist as a living identity, but their story continues to be told, not just as rivals of Israel, but as a people who left an indelible mark on ancient history. Every fragment of every reconstructed wall and every recovered account reminds us that they were not merely a footnote in biblical history, but protagonists of a larger narrative that shaped the ancient world. Although the Philistines disappeared as a distinct ethnic and cultural group over 2 millennia ago, their memory and symbolism remain alive, resonating in various areas of modern culture and political discourse. What remains of the Philistines today is not just archaeology or history. It is a legacy shaped by biblical narratives, literary interpretation, and the construction of modern identities. The word Philistine carries a cultural weight that extends beyond ancient history. In the Western world, it has come to mean more than the name of a people. Its pejorative use, to describe people insensitive to culture or focused solely on material interests, derives from a long history of moral interpretation of biblical narratives. This connotation began to emerge in post-Reformation Europe, where Christian scholars, often influenced by literal readings of the Bible, used the Philistines as a symbol of an ignorant and oppressive other. This symbolism was amplified during the Enlightenment, when writers like Matthew Arnold popularized the term to criticize the bourgeoisie of the time, seen as materialistic and uninterested in arts and humanities. Curiously, this modern cultural appropriation of the Philistines does not reflect who they actually were. Historically, the Philistines were technologically advanced, culturally sophisticated, and militarily powerful, qualities that contradict the simplistic image of cultural ignorance. At the same time, there are contemporary efforts to rediscover the Philistines in a new light. Researchers and archaeologists working at sites like Tel Ashkelon and Tel Ekron have brought forth a more nuanced view of this people. Their discoveries portray an innovative and resilient people whose cultural and technological contributions were essential to the region's evolution. These new narratives challenge negative stereotypes and present the Philistines as active and dynamic participants in the ancient world. In the modern Middle East, the name Philistine has acquired yet another layer of meaning. The etymological connection between Philistine and Palestine serves as a starting point for some political and cultural claims in the region. Although there is no direct ethnic continuity between the ancient Philistines and modern Palestinians, the name Palestine, derived from the Latin Palestina, itself from the Greek Philistia, creates a symbolic association. This connection is occasionally used in political discourse to reinforce historical ties to the land, even if it is more nominal than literal. Archaeology plays a key role in this process of reinterpretation. Every pottery fragment, every unearthed wall, and every recovered inscription serves as a window into a past far more complex than biblical narratives often suggest. Initially presented as antagonists, the Philistines now appear as a cultural bridge, connecting the Mediterranean world to the Middle East. This enriches our understanding not only of who they were, but also of the impact they had on neighboring civilizations. In literature and entertainment, the Philistines continue to captivate the popular imagination. Films, novels, and series that explore biblical stories often highlight the Philistines as villains or powerful adversaries. However, more recent works have sought to humanize them, portraying them as individuals with their own motivations, fears, and aspirations. This effort to reevaluate the Philistines' history reflects a growing desire to revisit the past through multiple perspectives. Additionally, the modern use of the Philistines in popular culture, often unaware of their real origins, reveals the enduring power of biblical narratives in shaping identity and collective imagination. The figure of the Philistine, whether as a giant like Goliath or a military oppressor in Samson's stories, remains a potent cultural symbol, even if often disconnected from their true history. This disconnect between the historical Philistines and the symbolic Philistines underscores a central theme in their modern legacy. They are a blank canvas onto which different societies project their fears, ideals, and judgments. For some, they are a reminder of cultural resilience. For others, a symbol of ignorance and materialism. In both cases, the Philistines continue to influence our perception of the past and shape conversations about identity and power. The archaeological rediscovery of the Philistines is, in many ways, a means of giving them a voice once again. Through the artifacts and texts they left behind, they reveal themselves as more than mere antagonists. They were innovators, masters of adaptation, and crucial participants in one of the most dynamic periods of human history. As we continue to explore their world, the Philistines challenge us to reconsider how we understand memory and legacy in ancient history. And you know what's incredible? This story still holds so many mysteries to unravel, so many unexpected connections that could completely change how we view ancient peoples and their impact on history. As we peel back these layers, who knows what more might emerge? Stay tuned, because the next step in this journey might be closer than you think. There's a video in the card appearing on the screen now that will take you to other impressive stories about the Bible. If this video sparked your curiosity, leave a like. It helps us continue bringing stories as intriguing as this one. And of course, don't forget to support the channel by following us. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. Thank you.